Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back to Women Mastering Midlife. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, and today's episode is one for the books. For the very first time, I had not one, not two, but three incredible guests join me all at once. And trust me, when the host of the Dusty Muffins podcast were available to chat, I knew I had to figure out how to make it happen. If you don't already know them, you're in for a treat. Dr. Aoife O'Sullivan, who's been on my podcast a couple times already, Dr. Rebbecca Hertel, and Dr. Hart Kress are certified menopause practitioners, fierce advocates for evidence-based care, and longtime friends who support women through the most misunderstood stage of life, midlife and menopause. Together, they bring wisdom, warmth, and well-earned sass to the conversation. In this episode, we talk about why they launched their podcast, what makes them different from other providers in the menopause space, and why collaboration over competition is critical in women's healthcare. We also get into the clinical. We dive into science behind hot flashes, vasomotor symptoms, and their surprising links to brain and heart health. We talk about the hidden risks, the myths, the prescription hurdles at the pharmacy counter, and the reality that one hot flash is one too many. This is a conversation filled with laughter, learning, and more than a few mic drop moments. Whether you're a woman going through perimenopause or someone working in the space, you're going to walk away with insight, validation, and a whole lot of admiration for the Dusty Muffins.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for joining me. This is the first time I've ever had this many guests on the podcast at once, but when the Dusty Muffins can figure out a schedule to come meet with me and talk on my podcast, I had to figure out how to do this technologically so we can make it happen.
Thanks for having us, Victoria. Awesome. We're really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Not to be too rogue for you. Sometimes we're a little unhinged.
But no promises. No promises.
No, it's totally fine. If we get a little E at the end of our podcast title for Spotify, that's totally fine with me.
That may well happen, just to warn you. Yes.
Our whole podcast is E. Yes.
Aoife has been a guest on my podcast before, but I have not had the pleasure of meeting Christine Kress or Rebbecca Hertel. So if you guys could introduce yourselves to the audience, and Aoife, you need to chime in as well in case anybody hasn't heard our episodes together, so everybody can get to know a little bit about you guys.
I'm Aoife O'Sullivan. I'm a family physician up here in Oregon, and I see patients in Oregon and Washington through my telemedicine clinic because I specialize in menopause, which is mainly what I do now, and I go by Portland Menopause Doc.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm Dr. Hart Kress. I'm a board-certified women's health nurse practitioner and menopause certified practitioner. I see patients via telemed full-time, just like my colleague over there, Dr. O'Sullivan. I'm licensed in 10 states.
Wow.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Rebbecca Hertel. I'm a board-certified osteopathic family medicine physician and a certified menopause practitioner. And I have my own telemedicine practice as well. And I also still do a brick and mortar practice that's insurance-based model. So I do both.
So what brought you guys together? How did you each meet each other? Because it feels like you're all over the map. So how did that come about?
We worked together. Well, actually, I think, first of all, Dr. Heather Hirsch has a course for clinicians, and she teaches you all about menopause and also how to treat it. And it's much more forward thinking than a lot of the other courses that were available at the time, especially. And we all did that course together and we learned together, and then we ended up working together afterwards.
And then we also did a research study together. We did a survey out on social media. It was when we first just started all going into social media, that wide wander, that whole thing, right? That has its pros and cons. And so we did some research together, and then we presented at the Menopause Society last year together. And, for me as a nurse practitioner, I think that physicians are either really welcoming or really standoffish. And for me, both Rebbecca and Aoife were just so welcoming, which was such a breath of fresh air for me. I live in nurse world where we eat our young, and then to have two female physicians that I could contribute to the conversation, and they were like actually engaged with me. I was like, this is awesome. And so we call ourselves the Menno Besties.
Yeah, it was really great. And so when we all decided we were working together and doing all these fun things together and a ton of shenanigans together. So, at different times we had decided to launch on our own and to open our own telemedicine practices, and which we did. And at one point we were like, you want to do a podcast? That might be fun. And the Dusty Muffins was born.
There's a lot of communication each day, a lot of texting, phone calls. And at some point it was like, we should just make this available.
Yes.
Make other people listen to this.
Yes.
Because we talk about research and issues that we're having, issues our patients are having, and it's all really interesting usually, and kind of would be very informative because we're trying to get to the bottom of all these issues, and so it's nice being able to get that across in a podcast.
Yeah. And, cases as well, right? So, we talk about cases with each other. Like, have you heard this? Have you, what would you do here? And laughing at our own selves as well, because, we're all three perimenopausal. And so we're going through it with everyone. And so we were just like, well, why don't we give them all the information plus all the good stuff that, hey, we're doing this right alongside you.
I mean, every week the girls are like, Aoife, would you please stick another patch on?
Yeah.
We can't tolerate you. You're just a mess. Stick more patches on, Aoife. Put 4 or 5 of them on.
Yes.
I
don't like the tone of your text. Are you yelling at me?
Rebecca's famous. She'll say to me, yo, simmer down, Cheetah. Hormones. I think, the other thing is that was also really important to us is to have women see other women uplift each other. And even though we're each having our separate businesses, we're each, all over the country, like you said, like we're not geographically located. And so, we're like, okay, from a business perspective, there's got to be easier ways to do things. And so many people in the space are like so proprietary, like that's mine, you can't share. And I'm like, you know what? We do not all need to make up an XYZ thing for our patient. And so I think that's been really helpful and has helped us be successful in our own businesses, is that we share everything. And if someone creates something, we're like, here, have it. Because there's women are already getting beat up, our patients, right? By the time they come to us, that even in this space, they're, we wanted to be different and show that we could work together to help each other build our own businesses and then build this brand and this business. And I think we've done a really good job in just the short period of time that we've had our podcast, because the Dusty Muffins we launched on, was at the 1st of March. So not too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for me, I've noticed my algorithm is if it's not like recipes, it's menopause. Like my kids make fun of me. I'll go somewhere with them and they're like, oh my gosh, everybody stops her and talks about their hot flashes. Like, come on. And it's just, but when women can get together and share instead of holding proprietary information like it's some secret, and then it becomes this pitting against each other. And I've seen these whole out wars on social media of this person makes a claim and this person has to refute it, and this person has a product and this person has to say why it's horrible. And it's like, come on, there's enough women out there who need help. And I think that there's a lot of women who need different kinds of help. And so by offering every personality, every background, you're just giving more women an opportunity to make a choice.
Yeah. And I think there are enough awful things going on at the moment for us to be focused on. And there are enough charlatans out there selling literal snake oil to women that we can all be pissed at, that I feel like we need to direct our energies more constructively, definitely. Yeah.
Because I think then all that happens is that the women are now confused. But then what's even worse is that then they go to their regular provider and they try to advocate, and then they say something which kind of sounds silly. My menopause doctor on social media, right? Like that sounds like that's definitely some made up stuff. And then they've heard about the bickering and backfighting, and then they're non-believers anyway, and so then we're just even creating more chaos in the healthcare systems, and patients are the ones that lose out on that. So we hope people think that we're different, because we sure try to be.
Yeah, it's instead of Dr. Google, now it's Dr. TikTok or Dr. Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, because they're tired of feeling so terrible, and not getting the answers. So, and their practitioners aren't trained to give them the answers. And so, they're really forced to find out, like, why do they feel so terrible? Why are their relationships failing? Why are their children irritating? Why can't they think straight? Why are they wanting to leave their jobs? All of these things, and nobody has answers for that. And if they do, it's here, well, this is just part of life. And, that's no longer an answer.
And, if it wasn't for social media and podcasts, I don't think the three of us would ever have figured out what was wrong with each of us. And that would, it was us going through our perimenopause that made us so fiery about this. Like, we didn't want one other woman to go through what each of us had gone through. And we found all these courses to do and this education that was available through the internet. It certainly wasn't taught to us in our regular training. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, There's positives and negatives. Yeah, but for me, as far as I'm concerned, way more positives.
Yeah, but just like you were saying, I mean, there are still physicians that work locally that the minute they hear, I saw this on social media, can you help me with this? They immediately shut down.
I don't know how we change that.
I don't know. I think it takes, seeing women respond to, therapies that you can't find, like there's no cookbook for it, right? There's no guideline. Like if you followed what the Menopause Society said to do, everybody be miserable, because their mantra, in our opinion, is do everything you can but prescribe. And I think it takes like trusting women, really listening, and, empowering them to be in charge of their hormones, which, women, especially in perimenopause, they can titrate their hormones quite nicely. But I think it's as a provider, until you see what listening does and what giving patients a little bit of autonomy and not being so fearful, then you're like, okay, there is doing it according to the guidelines, and then there's doing what actually works. And then you become more confident, because I'm far more, I think, I don't know what the right word is. I'm far more crafty now than I was. I was pretty black and white when I started this journey. And, so many women later, you really learn what's not in the textbooks just by listening to women.
We do a lot of teaching and to residents and nurse practitioners and just clinicians in general and women. But I think that's something that I mention at every talk, if possible. I say to doctors, this requires reframing. This is very different than how we were taught to act as doctors going through our training, where we were the experts and we knew what was best for the patient. And the patient could either take that or they could leave it. And for me, this has taken a whole rewiring of my brain and reframing, because to each patient now I say, now these medicines are really safe. It is okay for you to play around with them a little bit. you can take 2 of your progesterone at nighttime instead of 1 and see if that gives you any extra benefits. And if it doesn't after a week or 2, go back down to 1. And you should see these women's faces. They're like, oh my God, thank you. Like, just what a simple thing to say to a patient. I know that you know your body best, and I'm not at home with you monitoring you, but you are an intelligent being and you can figure this out and give me back the information so I can help. You know, we don't give women enough credit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And when I was in pharmacy school, you know, we would have our therapeutics classes. We would be given a case, and we would be given all the meds, the soap notes, all the things, and we'd have to diagnose and make a treatment plan and a follow-up plan for patients. And there's guidelines, you know, there's blood pressure monitoring and there's glucose monitoring and cholesterol levels. But with menopause, that's not the case. And so for women, and you're not having that education and that structure around menopause that you were given in your traditional training. So now you kind of have to create this new mold for how to practice. And it's just not the norm. And I even know from a pharmacy side, working in a retail pharmacy, I absolutely guarantee you they're still getting hard halts on vaginal estrogen and a transdermal patch. 100%.
Oh, yeah. They are. And just
I was just going to say, if all the pharmacists could just be taught that, our lives would be so much easier.
Yeah. Victoria, have you considered going into some form of teaching within pharmacy groups or at their annual conference, or some way to reach pharmacists to educate them on all this information that you know?
Oh, well, personally, I would like to go to the Hill and say this should be required, continuing education for pharmacists. I mean, when I transferred licenses... Yeah, well, yes. But I feel like there's not even a discussion around pharmacists at all. Like, there's still some now for nurses and doctors, but the stopgap is where you get your prescription. So you finally get the care that you want, and you finally get somebody to listen to you, and you get a prescription sent into the pharmacy, and they're like, no, we can't do this because you can't have testosterone, or no, you know, you can't have 2 forms of estrogen, or, you know, you have a medication that shows you have high blood pressure. So no, we can't give you any kind of hormone therapy. And so I think if I have to take 8 continuing education credit hours on HIV and AIDS education to get licensed in the state of Washington, or if I need to have death with dignity training in the state of Oregon to become a licensed pharmacist, why is there not a 1 to 2 hour recap for pharmacists that's mandated as a continuing education to renew our licenses?
Because someone has to create it. That's you.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
I've even thought, you know, like, do I just give free webinars to like the local pharmacist? I mean, anything. I don't know. You know, I'm completely willing to be like, here you go. Here's all the information. Here's the testosterone guidelines.
Yeah, the issue that you have is that the software needs to be updated with the computer system, because when we get a prescription and we get a warning, a contraindication, from what I remember back in the day when I worked in a pharmacy, you have to enter in your initials and your password and authorize that override, which then all of a sudden puts the liability on you. And so that retail pharmacy chain will say, oh, we give her the tools to protect you from these mistakes, and she overrode it, and now there's a problem, and so it's on her. So there's a lot of fear of liability and litigation. And I mean, going into controlled substances, pharmacists have gone to jail for overriding you know, hard halts on medications. And so there's such fear around doing that override that I think a lot of them, they don't have the education to be comfortable making that choice, but they also aren't getting the support on the back end.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize that. You know, I think the other thing is even just like local pharmacies, like paying attention to stock. Like, I mean, at 2025, you should not have to wait, 48 hours to get, estradiol gel. I mean, it's available. You can get it in fast. If you can get it in 24 to 48 hours, that means you're not ordering enough. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that is really frustrating because, most women wait to tell us, I only have 2 left. And then there's not enough stock at the pharmacy. And then they get, a hard time by the pharmacist. Or my very favorite is when the insurance is like, don't you want to consider a different med? No, I don't. But thanks.
Yeah,
Always.
it's very frustrating. And a lot of it is hand tying. But I think that if the medication doesn't cost your pharmacy $10,000 to stock an inventory, you should have a few days supply on hand. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple.
We should be in charge.
I'm like, it's been a little while. I will say it's been a little while since I worked in a pharmacy. I was a pharmacy manager. And I think that when you're repeatedly not having stock of the same medications, it's a problem.
Hey, here's a question for you, Victoria. Back then, when you were a pharmacy manager, did you find that hormone therapy would be past the expiration date and you were throwing a ton of it out? I don't know what your time frame was when you were in that retail pharmacy.
Yeah, it was like, so if anything had an expiration date of 6 months, we would mark it. And then if it was, I think like 3 months, I don't remember. I can't tell you what I ate for dinner last week, but I think that it was 3 months, we would toss it because there's the certain time frame for patients to be able to use it all. And so if you're giving out a 90-day supply, you should be able to guarantee that it's within 90 days expiration, but it is pretty wasteful.
I was just thinking back whenever it was, right? If it hasn't been in the last 5 years, just think about all the hormones that probably were being thrown out because no one was taking them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was a pharmacy student. I graduated in 2003. So I was like in the thick of Prem-Pro dying on my shelves.
And probably lots of crazy phone calls,
Yes.
worried people.
Yeah, terrified. And then women started suffering.
Yep.
And it just became acceptable.
Toleration.
It's unfortunate. Sorry, I've just totally gone on my pharmacy.
No, we did the
diatribe,
same.
but-
We talk about
It's
it's almost
great.
a daily. It's almost a daily discussion. I just am like, my neck's hurting from doing this every day.
Oh, absolutely. And then you've got to go through now when you open your vaginal estrogen for the first time, you're going to find this big insert in there that is full of warnings that tell you you're going to get breast cancer, blood clots, heart attacks, strokes, and none of that is true. And the patient will nod and say, okay, I got it, doc. I'll throw it in the trash. And then you follow up with them a few months later. Did you ever start your vaginal estrogen? No, I looked at that insert and it terrified me. I mean, there's just so many things that women have to put up with that don't happen when you look at what's happening over on the men's side of medicine.
Yeah, but I think if you look at, if anybody looked at the package insert on any stock bottle of any medication, you'd probably be pretty terrified to take it. So, having a black box warning on estrogen it's crazy making. But I think that sometimes too much information can be a bad thing.
Well, and it's a whole separate discussion. So, every day I'm just like, okay, I'm going to give you some vaginal estrogen. I want you to throw it out because it's not true and it's not going to give you demand and all of these things and hope that she's going to do that and understand and not think well, why would they have something in there that says those things? And why should I believe you and not what's in this prescription box, right? I mean, I don't know. I would be a little nervous about that too if I didn't understand, black box warnings and how things have to be put on medications and things like that. It just, it makes it difficult for us. And you just, thank goodness they trust you enough. And when you can have time to sit and have those conversations with them to explain that to your patients, but they still have to take a little bit of leap of faith, right?
Yeah. I think you guys having time with your patients and the practices that you have is crucial, especially for dealing with midlife women's health.
Yep, exactly. It's very difficult in an insurance-based model. That's for sure.
Really tough.
Yeah, talk as fast as you can and hope there's no questions.
And bring them back 4, 5, 6, 7 times every 6 weeks and and then they wonder why. And you're just like, because I don't have enough time. And it's not an, oh, by the way, discussion when their, annual physical or their PAP or their med check with, their 10 different medicines. And oh, by the way, I'm having hot flashes. And you're like, I have to bring you back. I can't do this because there's a whole line. I'm 45 minutes behind already today.
And even as you're walking from that room into the next patient's room, you're thinking of the 20 things you did not get to say to that last patient or warn them about or, inform them about. It's a very difficult way to work. Patients deserve more, and so do clinicians.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked at a pharmacy retail chain. I won't say their name. It wasn't the last place I worked, but we had a metric.
And are they still around? Because they're all closing.
Yeah. I don't know if they've changed their business model, but probably not. When a prescription would come in for somebody, it would estimate what the wait time is for you. The computer system, like you scan in the prescription, they're going to wait. The computer system decides this should take you 13 minutes. And so they will start this clock, and you have this little meter that's green, yellow, and red to tell you if you are processing prescriptions and getting them out the window in an efficient manner. And so we would see that, like, I was in the red zone, like, regularly. Because if you stop and you talk to somebody, or, you have a prior authorization that's required, or you have a dose question, or my favorite was you had the ER shoppers for narcs, because this was back when, like, you didn't have electronic prescribing and you didn't have all of the safeguards. But how do you put that on a pharmacist that they have 13 minutes to enter a prescription, have somebody type it, and you have technicians doing some of the work, but you're still responsible for the work that's put in. And you're trying to do that and answer phone calls and answer questions about over-the-counter prescriptions and do inventory and run a drive-through because, I went to school for how many years to work a drive-through. And so it's just like, it's maddening.
It's making me feel bad that I don't leave a message and I make the pharmacist talk to me every time I call.
No, I think we appreciate the human connection.
Sometimes it's so much easier. Yeah. But when you have that good rapport, I'll tell you locally, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I know Dr. Hertel likes it this way and that way and this way. Absolutely. Not a problem. When you have just, a good rapport with, that's still a team. It's your team. If, it's a little bit harder telemedicine in different states because I don't feel like, I get that with my patients necessarily. But definitely if you're working, locally, it's so important to have teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I worked in a pharmacy that was across from a pain clinic in St. Louis outside of pharmacy school. And the very first week I was licensed and on my own, I got a prescription for a crazy amount of Dilaudid. And I was like, this is not okay. And I called and they started laughing and they're like, you're new, aren't you? Because it's just... But after a while, I was like, hey, it's me across the street. Did you really mean to do this? And they're like, yes, we did. But most of the time, I would just know, okay, I'm going to see 270 Dilaudid coming from this office regularly. And so it does affect the patient relationship with the doctor and the pharmacy if you can just stay in one place and go local and know your team. But I think that there's been a lot of pitting of doctors against pharmacists. I've seen a lot of it in social media where somebody will make a claim about pharmacists just need to do what they're told, and then the patients are like there's comment after comment of like, how dare they tell me I can't take this? How dare they? And I get that there's frustration, but at the same time, if we all work together as a collaborative effort, I think that it would just benefit everyone so much better.
Mm-hmm. I think people forget that the pharmacist is licensed too.
Yep. And sometimes it's not I had it happen locally where, it was the testosterone. And I'm like, wait a second. They know, they know what I do. This is not, and they've done this for me, 100 times. And so it was worth that quick phone call to say, hey, what's going on? Do I need to do something different? Did I mess up? And she's like, no, we had some float staff. I'm sorry. They didn't know, not a big deal. I'll fix it. So it was just something so simple that, it wasn't, it was her staff that was trying to help her. It wasn't even the pharmacist to begin with. It can be worth just that quick call and not to get upset. Because I will tell you, I was just like, wait a second, and then it was just worth just that quick call and all was good.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've gone completely, we've taken a 90-degree turn. I wanted to
fun,
talk to you
though.
guys about your podcast, and now we're talking about pharmacy, but that's my wheelhouse. So I'm like, I do wish if I could figure out a way to make a generalized continuing education for pharmacists, that would be amazing. I think the hardest part is trying to squeeze it into a CE that someone would want to sit through because there's so much. I mean, it would just be a huge amount of information.
It would have to be a series, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Part
probably.
one, part two.
Yep. They could do on their own time or,
Like
whatever.
a Netflix series, 6-parter with a murder in the middle. I'd watch that.
Ooh, yes. The next Harlan Coben 8 episode
Yes.
murder mystery. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. That's a great idea. And if I could market the heck out of that, that would be amazing too. So the podcast, we'll go back because I really want to talk to you guys about the Dusty Muffins because one, the title's amazing, but two, like the idea that like sitting and listening and being a fly on the wall with you guys is pretty darn fun. So let's talk a little bit about like the premise of your podcast and what you guys are talking about right now so we can kind of give my listeners a little taste of what your podcast is like.
Oh, thanks very much for those kind remarks. It was Christine's husband, Andrew, who came up with our name, having listened to us banter about it on the speakerphone, I think. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell that story, Christine?
No, you're good.
Oh, he
great story.
he said, you guys need to call yourselves the Dusty Muffins. And I definitely didn't know. I mean, I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard.
Wait, where is it?
And perfect. But I didn't know the SNL skit behind the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so for anyone listening who also doesn't know it, it's an old SNL skit with Betty White and two of the SNL characters who are kind of dowdy women who have their own kind of public radio show. And they have her on because she's a baker and she makes muffins. And she's brought them some samples and they are tasting them and they're saying, "Oh, your muffin is so good. It tastes a little salty. Oh, your muffin just squirted in my mouth." And, her final piece de resistance is at the end when she says, "And here is my Dusty Muffin, my piece de resistance." And it is just so funny and so Betty White. And we just thought it was absolutely perfect. And I still, to this day, every time I say our name or think of our name, I giggle to myself because it's just fun.
And people just love the name.
Yeah.
They remember it.
Yeah, I've never seen that skit. I'm going to have to go look for it.
Oh, I'll send
because
you a link.
It's great.
It sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
It's good.
We should put a link in the show notes so everyone can have the pleasure.
Yes.
If you're navigating the maze of perimenopause and wondering, is this normal? You're not alone. My free guide, Menopause Science and Symptoms, breaks down what's happening in your body and why. It's your roadmap to understanding the changes and embracing this phase with confidence. Download it now at missvictoriabyrd.com/free guides and take the first step toward empowered wellness. You'll also find the link in our show notes below. Be sure to sign up and grab that free guide.
So what are some topics that you guys have gotten into in the last few months since you started?
The funny thing is we haven't talked about the Dusty Muffin. We haven't really touched on GSM at all. We need to do that.
We do. Yeah,
Really?
we do. We do. That's a good one for boy. I would say everything, right? I mean, we have not everything. I shouldn't say that. We've talked about sexual health. We've talked about, from the very beginning, just definition, right? Because sometimes, women don't even understand what perimenopause is or what menopause is. And we did one that was released last week where we had our Gen Z boys and their take on Oprah's Menopause Revolution. I believe it is the one with Mary Claire Haver and Halle Berry. I'm not sure if I was forgetting anybody else that was in there, but we asked them to watch our episode and come and talk to us about it. And I'll tell you what, I was very, very proud of those three boys. They had incredible answers, very thoughtful. They watched it, they interpreted it, and they really took a lot of it to heart.
Yeah, that's probably that's one of my favorite episodes, not just because it was Rebbecca and I, our sons, which was fun to have them part of something that we were doing because, they hear about it all the time. But we've, had Kelly Casperson on she was our first guest. So we were pretty giddy about Kelly being our guest. And then, what's important to us is to have some of the big names, but also the people that are just like us, just regular old providers in the space. And so we have some of them floating in here soon. We did our first 10 or 13 podcasts, just the three of us, just trying to figure out, what do we want to talk about? What's our jive? And, trying to make it, conversation, just like having coffee with your girlfriends. And now we're rolling in speakers, both known and soon to be known. Just this weekend, we did a sprint interval training coach because sprints are really good for burning visceral fat. And then we had Dr. Matsumura from Oregon, sleep, because everybody wants to know about sleep. And then Dr. Vonda Wright's on the horizon. We've already taped her. She'll be releasing here soon. So, it's been really fun just to spend some time with people that we our social media friends, right? Some people we've met, some people we haven't. And so it's just kind of fun to get together.
Yeah. I think to have that just moment with them, just to get to know them. I mean, we don't necessarily talk about the same old stuff that you hear them talk about on podcasts. A lot of times we're asking questions, like what kind of music do you listen to in the OR? Or, where are you from? Tell us some really neat things about yourselves. Because, we want to know that stuff. We've heard all that, a lot of the other, and we all, for the most part, I think have the same concept and same ideas about menopause and perimenopause, care for women. So we're still trying, for listeners that maybe haven't heard them, we still want them to be able to give their spiel, but it's also nice to get to know them in a different way too and ask them just different questions one-on-one that we haven't had time to be able to sit down and do with them before. So that's probably one of my most favorite things that we get to do.
Yeah, a lot of these women are our friends. And just to have that hour together, you don't get that. You see each other at conferences and stuff, and you're running and you maybe get a little chat here and there. But we have them trapped for an hour. And it's just such a joy, isn't it? It's so much fun. It's really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, I enjoy that. And some of some of the people that we haven't been able to get to know as well, we talk back and forth about who else should we ask? Or there's been, conferences that we've been to and we have a lot of people that'll reach out to us and, hey, we want to be on the Dusty Muffins, which is really neat too. We love that. We love having, anyone ask, hey, can we get on the lineup? And we're like, yeah, we love to talk to you. We love to talk. We love to chit chat, and half the time have to look at the timer to make sure that we're not going over because, we know women don't have a lot of time to listen. So
yeah,
I know it's been kind of crazy, the support that we've gotten. Cause we're booked out. We were wondering who's going to be on our podcast. And now we're oh, well, we need to add more dates.
We're all busy.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things we are trying to do, for the summer, we're trying to focus on family. These guys have kids at home. And so, we trying to find that balance because I think in this space, between social media, seeing patients, being podcasts, it's speaking engagements. And so, the reason why we all are in this space is to have some kind of work-life harmony. And so being able to step back a little bit and, find time for ourselves, our family, I think is important too. But yeah, it's been really wild.
And fun.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned about before I started a podcast, I was told if you can come up with 52 topics that you could talk about before you start a podcast, then you have a whole year's worth and you're ready to go. Then you can launch, you'll be good to go. But I think I got into 3 or 4 of those. And then you just start talking with people and you meet people or somebody crosses your path and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to have this person on and have a conversation with them. So I probably have completed maybe half of that list, maybe. But it's funny how it starts to take its own trajectory. And and change course based on what you're learning and also what's relevant in this. In social media changes so fast. I mean, if you try to keep up with it, it's almost impossible.
True. Yeah.
So one of the things that we wanted to discuss right now from a clinical aspect is hot flashes, vasomotor symptoms, and their impact on brain and heart health. So I really want to take some time to kind of get into that because I think that that's an important topic for women. For me personally, I was living in this like night sweat era. Like I didn't actually have daytime hot flashes, but I would wake up at 3:00 in the morning, soaking wet, like my pajamas stuck to me. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, what happened? But I never experienced an actual quote unquote stereotypical hot flash until we were in Whistler a couple winters back. And I was in a store and I had on a coat and I had on a turtleneck. And all of a sudden, like I'm handing the scarf to my mom and I'm handing my hat to my daughter and my jacket came off. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh, sorry, now I'm going to get naked. If I could take this turtleneck off, I mean, I literally wanted to just cut my clothes off of my body and I'd never experienced anything like that. And I went outside in the snow and I was like, do I lay down? Like what is the next step for me? And so if women are experiencing that on a regular basis and it's impacting work and it's impacting their ability to carry on a conversation or enjoy a lunch or sleep well, that's a problem, but it's also having ramifications with heart health and brain health. And so I think saying, oh, it's fine, it comes and goes, or oh, it's only bad when I drink or I eat spicy food, I can manage it. We need to know there's other problems that are associated with it.
Yeah. And, we were, what the information that's out there is, if you're having bothersome hot flashes and night sweats, then, maybe we can do something about that. And what we would like women to know is that because we know the research and we've read the papers, our view would be you do not want to be having any hot flashes or night sweats, right, girls?
Mm-hmm. One is too many.
One is too many. Life's too short to flash.
Yeah. And the reasoning is we got a lot of information from the SWAN study, the study of women's health across the nation. It's in 7 centres across the country. It's been going on since the 90s. There are over 3,000 women in it from different ethnicities, and they get followed up every year. And they were in their 40s, kind of perimenopausal when they joined, and now they're in their 70s. And there is just a wealth of information that we are not taught as clinicians. I do not know why it is not on the front page of newspapers, honestly, if not on the front page of medical journals. It should definitely be. But there's a Dr. Rebbecca Thurston who's very involved in this over on the East Coast in Pittsburgh. And she gave an amazing talk at the North American Menopause Society conference. And this information was mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. So they did studies on women to pick up on their hot flashes and night sweats, and they put a monitor on their breastbone. So and they gave the woman a little button to push, so she would push it if she felt the hot flash or night sweat. And women were missing up to 40% of them.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So even if you think you're not having them, the chances are you are. And when you do MRI brain of a woman who's been having hot flashes and night sweats, what you see are these little areas of white matter hyperintensities, which are tiny strokes. I mean, why is this not known in mainstream medicine? And why is every clinician taught we do not want women to be having tiny little mini strokes every time they have a hot flash or a night sweat? We cannot allow this to happen. This potentially down the road, who knows, could be partially responsible for dementia and cognitive changes in women. Why wouldn't it be, honestly?
Dementia.
It's your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are areas not getting any.
Right. I was to say, I one way I explain it to women, because, the problem with us and as a whole is that we always compare ourselves to others and say, well, it's not as bad as my friends, or I'm just a little warm. And so then they tend to feel shame or feel bad if they're not horrific. And so one way I describe it to them is saying, hey, these changes in your brain they are like when you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, and uncontrolled high blood pressure over time causes the same type of changes in the brain, which can cause what we call vascular dementia. And so, and when you put it that way to them so that they kind of can understand, and we don't let women or men have uncontrolled high blood pressure, right? So it seems to help them understand that a little bit more, because they understand blood pressure and they understand that that's a risk factor and that it needs to be controlled. So,
yeah. And I think a lot of women, when you start talking to them, when you ask, are you having hot flashes or night sweats? More often than not, the answer is no, even though 75% of women will have hot flashes. But when you start to really dissect it with them and you ask about sleep, because progesterone puts you to sleep, estrogen keeps you asleep, that you start asking them, well, let's start talking about your sleep. And, I'll ask people, are you having frequent awakenings? Are the covers going on and off? Are you putting your feet outside the covers? Because that is probably a hot flash. Night sweats, I think we need to relabel those, because you can have a hot flash without being sweaty and you can feel warm. And then other women will be like, it's not a hot flash. I just feel warm. I'm warm all the time, or warmer than other people. And I'm like, that is a hot flash. And I think, the movies and commercials, I think, have just sensationalized, what a hot flash is. And women think if they don't have steam coming off of them, or they're not changing their clothes at night, that they're not having hot flashes. And I think, other things that women don't realize, a lot of the, brain is up there, in things that we talk about, but women who have more frequent hot flashes have a 50% increased risk of diabetes, and the diabetes leads to heart disease. And then, we also, see a lot of women developing, insulin resistance, and then, increased weight and poor sleep, due to, the inflammation of not having the estrogen. And so I think, women, tend to see things like their cholesterol change, their blood sugars change, and they're not correlating that that's all metabolic changes if you're having hot flashes that are induced by those hot flashes, or at least part of that piece.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea. I mean,
cardiovascularly and, not just cognitively, but cardiovascularly. And they just don't realize that even the ones that you're not, again, dripping sweat and having steam come off your head. And I think, and maybe that's something that just societal wise, we need to stop saying to our friends, oh, that's nothing. My hot flashes, I can't, even keep my clothes on. I mean, and that may be something too that I think as women need to, be more mindful of our friends and in our community around us, and just saying, hey, you know what? Your hot flash is yours and mine is mine, and they're both not good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even in just listening to you guys, I was thinking about when I had my first baby. I remember them saying, when you go into labor, your contractions will take your breath away. That's how you'll know you're in labor. And so I was on bed rest, got off bed rest. I had a little bit of spotting one day and some cramping, and I would twinge a little bit, but I was fine. I called the doctor. He's like, oh, go in. Drove myself to the hospital, waddled across to the office, checked myself into the front desk. They hooked me up, and my contractions were 2.5 minutes apart. This is people telling you what your pain threshold should determine for your health.
Subjective. It's so subjective.
And so I'm listening to you talk about, I'm thinking of my last night. I didn't wake up sweaty, but I wake up consistently around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm taking progesterone. I haven't used estrogen in a while. So now I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, my brain needs me to slap a patch back on my butt. So I'm going to go downstairs and grab one. Because I thought progesterone was handling everything, because it was going to help me with my evenings. But I'm still waking up in the middle of the night. I'm still throwing a blanket off or opening a window.
Yeah.
Oh,
man. I always say to my women, it's worth a try. We stop it if it doesn't work or you don't like it. We're not married to it,
And there are a lot of women who, for their own reasons, don't want to start hormones now or
That's right.
ever, or can't for some reason. And there are other treatments that we can use.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what direction you want to go. We have something for you, but you
That's right.
shouldn't
We
be
just want
having
to
hot
stop
flashes
them.
and night sweats. Yeah, you shouldn't, because there is damage going on
Yes.
to your cardiovascular system that is irreversible
Yep.
and will accumulate over time.
And so I think
Yeah, I
that's
remember
kind of like
when I
that
took.
point.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I remember when I took gabapentin. I had a slip disc in my neck, and I took gabapentin at night to help me sleep with the pain. And I didn't have any hot flashes that night.
That's one of the treatments, gabapentin. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are other options out there.
No, I think the other thing that, we don't talk enough about is that estrogen deficiency also impacts bone density, and that vasomotor instability, having those hot flashes, they believe may actually accelerate your bone loss. And so everybody's, talking about preserving their bones, right? They're doing their creatinine, they're taking their protein, maybe they're having their weighted vest, though I think everybody should get one in the mail when you become perimenopausal, and you should slap it on. But I don't think we don't talk enough about hot flashes being a contributor, or even just increasing risk of breast cancer. There are some studies on that with hot flashes. So we do not believe in the hot or the flash.
No.
Wow.
No bleed, no
Well,
hot, no flash.
Yeah, so much talk right now is about menopause being more than hot flashes. So I'm even guilty of kind of brushing over the hot flash myself, because it's like, well, it's so much more complex than just a hot flash, but just the hot flash itself is more complex.
Right. And that's kind of why I think we wanted to bring it back and focus a little bit on that again, because you're right. Social media was kind of getting away from that a little bit. And then, and rightfully so, there are other things that are really important also, the mood and the bones and, joint pain and vaginal dryness and all of those things. But that we had to, the three of us were talking and we're like, boy, you know what? We really need to bring this back around, because the main reason was because I think we wanted to let women know that even being warm and having intolerance to a temperature change or your cold chills, that counts. That still counts, and that's still detrimental to your health.
Yeah, and lately there's just been so many women, when you're, deciding if you're going to be adjusting therapy, they're like, the first thing I hone in on is, you're still having hot flashes? And I'm like, what? And they're like, but they're not that bad.
It's so much better.
And then I'm like, what does that mean? Well, they're better than they used to be. I'm like, okay. I'm like, but we can make them better yet. And I think, women, have a PhD in menopause, and, I think women, are way smarter than most of, they bring me stuff every day that I'm like, what? Okay, let me go read that, because, they're diving, because now women really have to advocate for themselves. But, I lost my train of thought. Any more estrogen? But anyway, I'm sure it was a great thought. Whatever that was. But I just think we talk about cases all the time, and I'm like, women are still minimizing things because they're maybe grateful that they have any therapy, but that's what optimizing, that's what adjustments are. And that's why you should routinely follow up with your provider. I had a patient who sent me a text, can you order some labs for me? And I'm like, okay, you were a patient of mine in my last practice and have not seen me in my new practice. I'm like, well, you're not a patient. She's like, I'm not. I'm like, no, you're not my patient. And then she's like, oh, I last saw you in August. And I'm like, huh. She's like, well, my OBGYN ordered my meds. And she's like, I feel like my hormones aren't being managed. I said, that's because you have to schedule the follow-up. So that's the tweaking. That's the important part about, that's why I get aggravated too when providers send people away a year's worth of hormone therapy. Absolutely not. I do not think you should do that. As a patient, I don't think you should take it. I mean, at minimum, you should be checking in twice a year. But, I just, that's what optimization is tweaking those things so that we're preparing you for the next 40 years. And that's not a 365-day script. And that's you also being engaged with your clinician.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think, what you do is you find things out when you do that, right? Like, oh, you've been spotting. Oh, you're not tolerating this or that, or you stopped your progesterone and you didn't tell me, and now you've been taking estrogen for the last, because that happens and it happens a lot. Well, I didn't think about telling you. And so, or, you're using all this testosterone and we haven't done any labs. And so, and it's not because, women can't figure it out. They're busy and then they don't think about it. Oh, I forgot to refill that, because they are doing, a billion different things with their 6 different plates in their 2 hands. And so that's the importance of making sure that you are following up. Let us take care of that for you. Just show up, and we can have that conversation. So that way you can make sure that we're working together and you're not missing, those important conversations of, I forgot that I needed my progesterone refilled and I just didn't have time because I didn't have that follow-up already scheduled.
Yeah, I feel like even for myself, knowing as much as I know and knowing that it's okay to make an appointment to follow up, if I'm given a prescription for a year, I'm willing to tolerate suboptimal therapy than if I was given 3 or 4 months or maybe even 6 months of a prescription and I had to go back or at least call in and do a check-in. I think it almost gives women permission to continue to be miserable.
Right, because you're just like, I don't have time to make a follow-up appointment. I'm too busy. I can't do that. And yeah, you're right. Exactly. And then they feel bad. Like, I don't want to take the time to go make another appointment. The hot flushes are better. I still have a few, but they're, like Christine said, they're not as bad, and so having those check-ins really are, hey, we can maybe fine tune this for you. And I think, the other thing that sometimes we see is, women are scared to titrate up, right? They're just like, I don't want to be on that much hormone. So we take a lot of time, really discussing with them what menopausal hormones, and I do my hand graph, right? Like pregnancy's up here and birth control's here and menopausal hormones are down here. And so, because they're scared, I think there's still a part of them that's like, but is it going to give me breast cancer? But is it?
Oh
so
my God,
they'll
Rebbecca,
want the lowest dose that sometimes, yeah.
I just saw a patient exactly like that. And she had seen her OBGYN since she had seen me. And he scared the bejesus out of her. Aww. She said he made her feel as though she was on extremely dangerous doses of hormones. Yep. And I explained to her that she was on 1 milligram of estradiol in the morning and 1 in the evening, or 2 milligrams of estradiol a day, which would be equivalent to the middle dose of an estradiol patch. And she was like, wait, what? Like, he had really scared her. And I could tell that her confidence had been shaken in me.
Yes.
Because
that's
of
what
that.
happens. Mm-hmm. That's what happens. I had the same thing last week, and it was a family, seeing a breast cancer like high risk group, and it was for a family because of a family history and not personal history. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And yet she's got osteopenia. And I'm like, your bones are not good, and I felt terrible. And I was, but the same exact situation as Aoife. She was like, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to just stop, but I really need to think about this now. And so, these poor women are they're being scared to death because I wouldn't do that for you. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't suggest that. Like, it's not terrible, but why would you want to take that risk? That's what they're being told.
And I asked her, had her OBGYN suggested going on the birth control pill? And she said yes. And I said, well,
let's talk about
estradiol that you're on is a fraction of the birth control pill, a fraction of it. It's so much less potent, and it's such a lower dose, has such a less effect on the liver. So it's so ironic that a doctor would reach happily for something that was extremely potent, and a much higher dose, and yet scare the living daylights out of this poor woman about a much less potent, much lower dose and more natural. This is identical to the hormone her body has always made. The hormones in the birth control pill are wonderful, but they are different to the ones that our body makes. Yep. And so it all comes from lack of education, right? So this doctor, she didn't know. He seemed very confident. So to a patient, it seems this person knows what they're talking about. But because she told me what he said to her, I can tell this guy doesn't understand the pharmacokinetics of ethinyl estradiol and patch and gel and like, so, but yet he feels confident enough to scare her. Like, right. That's awful. That's awful. And I hear that from I would say most of my patients. They have stories like that.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Every day. It just, and when I asked about, were you offered studies? Were you offered data? It was none of that. And so, then you're going backward. So now their confidence is shaken. Now you have to go back through the WHI, go back through the studies again and re-explain it, because we know it's a lot of information even at that first visit. And, I'm just go back and say, well, right now your risk of having a hip fracture and getting osteoporosis and then having a hip fracture and then that 30% of death within that first year after a hip fracture is far higher.
And there's nothing else like this in medicine. Like, I've seen patients come back from consultants on the craziest med concoctions I've ever seen. Oh, your psychiatrist has you on 40 of Lexapro twice a day and 20 with lunch. Okay, I just keep my face straight and go, this consultant
the maths were good for that.
This is their job. I don't scare my patient and say, well, that's crazy. I've never seen that, because I don't have the training. I'm not a psychiatrist. But yet we feel very confident scaring women off hormones with no training.
That's right.
Yeah, we're done. We're tired of it. We're sick of it, Victoria. We hate it.
And it's okay, and the three of us have all said, and it's okay if you choose not to do that. But I want, women to make that decision with all of the correct education. And absolutely, your choice is your choice. But I don't, I haven't done my job if I haven't given you all the education to make a proper choice.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when we're looking at colleges for our kids, we do all the research. We find out their admission rate and what programs they have and are they academically rigorous. We spend months on this, but we don't spend the time to research what we're putting on our bodies or in our bodies to take care of our health. And so I think that it should be just as much of a priority.
Yeah. I agree.
And these are the same providers that, you get somebody who has osteopenia, and the first question I always ask is, did anyone have a conversation with you about treatment of your osteopenia? And the answer is always no. And then I say, did anyone talk to you about estrogen for the prevention of osteoporosis? No. And so that drives me so crazy, because you're on your little righteous hill. And then meanwhile, year after year, you're following osteopenia into the ground. Like, you might as well just be following behind her in a wheelchair, ready to go to the ER, to go to the nursing home.
Yep. Right. It's like our bone density scans, and, someone falls and has a fractured foot or a wrist, or they step down wrong and no one's done a bone density. And you're like,
right,
that is an indication for a bone density scan. Your foot shouldn't break at 48, 50.
Yeah.
Ever.
I remember when I decided I no longer wanted to talk hormones with my OB-GYN was when I asked about hormone therapy, and she was like, well, I mean, you're in perimenopause, maybe. I mean, she did the blood work and she said, you're definitely not in menopause. And I said, no, I know I had a period 3 weeks ago. And then I had one 16 days before that. And then I had one 7 days before that. And they're heavy and they're, no, I know I'm not in menopause. But she's like, well, we can keep you on birth control until you're 50. And then we take you off at 50. If you haven't had a period in a year, you hit menopause. And I was like, how is this an answer for somebody.
Is that care? It's just like,
Yeah.
we'll watch the circus emerge.
Yeah, what guidelines did that come from, right?
I don't know.
But that's the problem,
At 50.
right? There's no lateral thinking. It's almost like we've been conditioned so deeply through our training not to question that at all. Like that doctor was answering the best that she has been taught, right? And if you asked her a few follow-up questions, I am sure she would not be able to answer them. Like, where did you learn that? Stop the birth control pill at 50. Leave that woman with no hormones for a year and let's see if she's in menopause. Like, who taught you that? What was the reasoning behind it? Were there any studies involved? Do you know any of the literature? Like, they would not be able to answer any follow-up questions. Me too, before I learned all this, right?
Yeah,
like
same. Because I did all those things.
We have these crazy things that we believe and say to patients that are literal sound bites that someone tutoring us must have taught us 20 years ago, and we still carry with us and pass along, having no idea where they came from. Complete bullshit.
Yep.
But the problem is it's so detrimental to women's health. That's the problem. If it didn't cause a problem, whatever. But it's awful.
Yep.
On a good note, I got a text message from a patient this week that said, I went and saw my primary care provider, which always makes me go, like, not sure how that, because I've got a couple that are really afraid to go back and reveal that they're on hormone therapy. And she's like, and he loves your plan and is really happy with how well I'm doing. And I was like, yes.
I love
goodness.
it.
But that is rare.
Yeah,
Usually they're fighting with
the side eye.
I know.
And then they get shamed and then they get harassed by their practitioners, GYN or PCPs. Oh, you went somewhere else for this? Well, I'm not going to give you this. You know, second opinions are second opinions. 2 brains are better than 1. 3 brains are better than 1. And if you have a practitioner that treats you poorly because you got a second opinion, it is time to part ways. That's one
you gotta
big
let
thing.
your ego out. I'm always like, let's get another opinion.
Yeah.
That's our
Because
motto
guess
with the
what?
Dusty
If
Muffins.
I'm right, I'm like, okay,
3 brains are better than 1.
And if and if not, I learned something, right?
Yeah. It's just too much for one person to know. And it's, if you're not specializing, I mean, I don't understand why it's not okay to have a menopause specialist, but you should see an endocrinologist or an allergist or a dermatologist or, like there's, I mean, there's all these specialists.
I've seen people get sent to endocrinology for type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes. It's like our bread and butter in primary care. And you're sent off to an endocrinologist to wait 9 months to see one.
But
thyroid.
Thyroid. That one, I'm like, I can do that in my sleep.
Yeah.
But, now sometimes they want to, but and that's right. That's okay. It just, more and more, it's really, patients do need a team, because there's so many subspecialties. I mean, even GYN, our GYN colleagues talk about this all the time, right? There's so much in GYN care that you need to subspecialize. So it really is a team effort. I'm not taking your patient, but I am helping them have a much better life and a longer life, hopefully. And that's what you should want too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our goal is to hand people off. Like we come in for crisis management, get them where they need to be, then we get them taken care of. And then hopefully then they can go back to their primary, the OBGYN, and then they can, see them twice a year and do their refills. Though if we get them to prescribe, who knows what they'll do. But, that's the end goal, right? Because people are paying out of pocket to see a specialist. And so the end goal is we, come back if there's another crisis and, we'll, work on it. But this is basic. We're not doing rocket science, for Pete's sakes.
I know. And I love when a patient says their primary does want to get involved, because then I'm hoping when I send that letter back telling everything we talked about at the visit and what our plan is, I used to learn a lot when I was doing primary care from reading the rheumatology notes that would come back, the neurology notes that would come back. Some of them I would photocopy and keep, because I'd be like, right, well, next time I come in with someone who's not responding to X migraine medication, I'm going to try this while they're waiting to see neurology, because that could take a year. And in the meantime, maybe if I use this neurologist's, tips and tricks, I can get that patient feeling better by the time maybe they can even cancel their neurology appointment. So I hope when I send my letters back to primary care doctors that they are learning a little bit about menopause and treatment from those too.
Yeah, we just need a utopian healthcare society where everyone collaborates with each other.
Gotta get the egos out of the way.
There is a little bit of that. Well, so in the interest of time, I was thinking like we could make this 3 parts if we wanted to keep going. But it's been, I could talk to you guys forever, because it's fun to hear different perspectives and experiences, and, everyone can learn from each other. And I think that you can walk away from having a conversation with another physician or care provider and learn a little bit of something, maybe tweak something in your practice, or have a conversation like, show me your data. I don't believe you. Where's your standpoint? Or this was my experience. And then maybe you both come away with a different plan for your patients in the future. So I love that you guys have created this podcast space, and that you're having some guests on, but also that people get to listen to you guys talk about your caseloads and what you're seeing in the space. So thank you so much. And thank you for coming on to share with my audience your podcast and what you guys are doing as well.
Thanks, Victoria. We'll have to have you on the Dusty Muffins.
Yes. Yes.
And we could talk about more pharmacy stuff.
Yes.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
You
They would
see.
love that.
Before you beat up your pharmacist. Yeah. Come listen to this conversation.
We have enormous empathy for the pharmacists. What has been done to the doctors and nurse practitioners and PAs in the medical field is exactly what's being done to the pharmacists. They are being crushed, the life crushed out of them. They're no longer able to properly enjoy their job and do it properly and safely. We have enormous empathy for them. Yes, we would love to get in there and teach about hormones, but have enormous empathy for them. Yeah.
I'll just start busting through the pharmacy doors and be like, let me tell you guys, stop, hold the phone. That would be great. Well, thank you so much. And I'll put in the show notes the links. We have to link the Saturday Night Live skit so that everybody can get a little taste of Betty White, and where you guys can be found on all podcast servers.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Byrd. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.